out there, and welcome back to the next episode of My Grocery Adventure. My name is Carly Wharton, your host, and this is a podcast for people who want to make an impact. If you're listening only, do know that there is also a YouTube video, YouTube channel where you can see our faces and get the full effect of these conversations. I would also love if you could like the video or subscribe or follow whatever platform you're on. Those little nudges tell the algorithm that you want more people to see this content. So we definitely appreciate you helping us to push this out there into the world for other people who want to make an impact. So this is our third episode, as I said, and this is our third installment also with Tom Mulholland of Mulholland Grocery up in Malvern, Iowa. Tom has already appeared on 2 episodes, so if you've watched those, you're fully up to date. If not, this episode might feel a little bit out of context, but I think you'll still get a lot out of it, even if you haven't seen the first 2. By all means, feel free to watch them in order or not, whatever you prefer. This episode, The Road to Rebuilding, we have covered a lot of Tom's story so far, including upbringing and how he initially got into the grocery business, which actually was over a century in the making, with his family starting the store and handing it down through the generations. It did get out of the family there at one point, but him purchasing it brought it back into the family. The pandemic was a part of that first episode. We talked about how crazy it was to be the manager of a grocery store, the owner of a grocery store during the front lines of a global pandemic. That was wild times. So that was that first episode. The second one, we talked about a true tragedy as far as Mulholland Grocery, in business for over 100 years in the family, burning to the ground and really nothing being able to be salvaged from that, and experiencing a total loss as not just the owner of an asset, and this is your livelihood, but other people's livelihoods, all the jobs that went up in smoke in that instant, and all of the people's food access that went up in smoke in that instant, that now they have to drive further away to get their groceries because Mulholland's isn't there right down the street anymore. So, like I said, true tragedy is what I feel Tom has faced. He might tell you something different. And especially in this episode, where we are going to, more get to hear about what's happened since then. What was the immediate aftermath? That was kind of in that second episode where we talked about getting the fire cleaned up and how strenuous of a process that even was. And that's where we'll be picking it up. So I know that, I think it was like 6 months that it took for the insurance agents to do their investigation and finally come and clear away the debris. So we're in the middle of, what was it, June of 2022, thereabouts, when the debris is getting cleaned up. So we'll kind of pick it up right there, because that part, which was already 6 months in the making, was at the same time only being able to kind of get the slate clean so you could even think about whatever came next. So where do you even begin at a moment like that? Had you worked during that 6 months to kind of go ahead and line up the rebuilding, or was it more the middle of 2022 when you kind of switched gears into rebuilding?
I was doing what I could, and one of the things that I have said very often is that I was completely out of my realm. I had no idea what I was doing. I tell people that I've never put up a garden shed before. So building a commercial building is not something I knew anything about. The town believed in the store. The town needed the store. There's a young lady here in town, Leslie, that works for an architectural engineering firm in Omaha and has an office in Glenwood, one of our neighboring towns. She grew up right down the street from me, and she believed that the store was something that was absolutely necessary and knew that I needed help. And she has been fantastic, has been my right hand person. She's had so many things going on in her life also. Just about the same time, her mother passed away from cancer. She got married. So I'm not the only thing in her mind, but she's been fantastic for me.
Mhm.
Helped to guide me, helped me pick out uh, people that could help me tremendously in what we're doing. We chose an architect that has his office in Des Moines, which is about 120 miles away from Malvern, for those that don't know. But he specializes in small downtown projects, the older buildings like what you can see behind me. That's what we had. That is my building there, and that's my sign that we,
Isn't that cool?
something that I really love. Yeah,
I've never
and
seen
we're
anything like it. It's
being rebuilt also, so
oh
that we
good.
can get that back there, being redone. But so I tried to find important members of the team and people that could help me along. Um,
When did you start working with Leslie? Like at what point did you make that connection?
the fire was in December, and she reached out to me, and said that she would love to help me in any way that she could. I don't know when it was, but it was very early on, uh, very possibly within the first couple of days. I don't know. Or maybe it was after it took about a month for me to decide and announce that, yes, I was going to rebuild
Oh,
because I'm at the age where rebuilding and putting all of that effort into something like this is going to be a challenge. So, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I needed to think about my options, look over the insurance and things like that. And when I did make the announcement that I was going to rebuild, I mean, it meant so much to the community. And if she wasn't on board before that, then she certainly was at that point and offering to help. Um, but again, it's I didn't know what I was doing. And there's been so many times all along this that it showed. Some of the things that I thought might be, the last phases in a process like this were actually what I needed to do first. And,
you have an
they,
example of that?
well, like, picking out all of the refrigeration equipment. You know, I figured they'd put the building up, and then that's when we need to figure all of that out. No, they want all of that picked out so that they can kind of build around it and put the electrical in that they need and all of the other things to get that planned. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, but there were lots of others to help me and help guide. Um, her firm KPE has worked very well with me, very closely with me. They sent out a request for qualifications to numerous construction companies. I'd already talked to someone, just like any tragedy, there were lots of construction companies and things like that showed up the day after the fire. Hey, we can help you. It's kind of like the ambulance chasers.
I was just
If
gonna
you,
say,
it's
yeah,
true though.
yeah.
And I had many, many different people that were trying to talk to me and
Uh,
get in front of me in those first few days, that first week or something. And I did talk to a couple of them while I was trying to decide, and I did pick one of the companies that was there very early on, and it looked like they'd be a very good fit. And it's been a year and a half now. And that first half year, as you said, we couldn't do anything because we were waiting to clean up the debris, waiting on engineers to decide if the building next door was stable enough we could bring in the big equipment.
mm.
But it's been another year since then, and there had just been arguments back and forth between the architect, the construction company, and I'd kind of lost my confidence in the construction company. So we got out of our contract recently with them and are talking to someone else. You know, I don't have enough money for my rebuild right now. That's one of the issues that we faced, and I'm hoping that I get treated very fairly by the construction company for asking out of the contract. We're still waiting to see on that, but it could have a big impact on what we're doing in the future. Um, Again, I've said this before, but I'm going full speed ahead. It doesn't look like it at times, but I'm doing everything that I can and waiting for more information from others. And right now, the construction company that we reached out to, they're putting a bid together so that we can talk to them. We have a few others in our minds if we need to move on to someone else, but we're doing it and moving on.
So does that mean if you have sent out the RFQ already, does that mean you have like a layout and the equipment picked out and like you've done that part of the process, like of the redesign?
Right. Right. I'm staying with the architect. We've got the designs all prepared and, hoping that, my banker's trying to talk me into coming down a little bit in size, just because I am short on money. But I don't see that I can make it any smaller, make it work, and therefore make it work for the community for the next 20 or 30 years, because that's part of my plan. I'm going to be at retirement age when it gets rebuilt, but I'm still going to be there for a number of years. But my intention is that I'm rebuilding this so that my community will have a grocery store for the next 20 or 30 years. I want to make it strong enough. I want to make it valuable enough that someone else will want to buy it. And I've just gone through a mentoring program with Kansas State University and the Rural Grocery Initiative, about, getting that passed on and finding the buyer for that. So it's in my mind. I'm working on. I keep telling people I'm busting my butt to get back in business while I'm planning my exit strategy. Also, that's always in the future, but I've got to look at that also. But I'm gambling my whole future on this because selling this business is going to be my retirement plan. And again, I have to make it just as strong as possible and as valuable as possible to do that.
Yeah, that's the hard part about selling a grocery store is that a lot of them aren't really profitable. And like at that point, who wants to buy a business that like isn't making any money? And so to
Right.
rebuild while you're also trying to like hit some, profitability kind of picture so that it is in a strong enough position to be able to sell pretty soon. I mean, they say like you need at least 3 to 5 years to plan a business transition. And so the fact that you want out about 5 years after it opens, like that's, yeah, you're pretty much right on schedule. Not
Yeah.
thinking,
When I bought the building, I was talking with our local banker, and he's passed on, and his son is the president of the bank now. But I was talking with Alan Burdick, and he told me, he said, I would not loan anybody the money to buy that store except you. He said, the family name that you have here and what you've done for the community for over 100 years, the reputation that you built in Omaha as a meat cutter, he said, that's the things that are going to do it. Small town grocery stores are a dying breed, and it isn't going to be easy, but I have faith in you, and I think you can do it. And as I've said in the previous episodes, it was very hard at times, but
yeah,
we had really turned the corner. We had made that name for ourselves. We were bringing people in from all over the area and way beyond at times for the specialty products that we made. And those are also the types of things that are going to allow us to make this building and this business as strong as possible and get that reputation built for a new owner. I've said that I'm the only one that can put a grocery store in this town, for our future. Because as you said, these small town grocery stores are not super profitable. It made a nice living for me, did fine, and I expect that in the future. But if somebody else were to come in and try to start from scratch, by the time they put up a building, there wouldn't be enough profit in it to pay it off. But, with the insurance money that I have, which isn't enough, and with help that we're looking for in different areas, then I should be able to and make it valuable enough that someone else will want to take over that and see what we've got here. And with community realizing what they lost and how much it means to have a grocery store here now, that's gonna make a difference.
Yeah.
I've got neighboring communities that lost their grocery store, uh, six of them over within 45 miles in the time that I was in business. And sometimes it's only after they lose that store that they realize we should have done more to support. You know, I'm working hard now to bring it back for my community. And I certainly do believe that we're going to have even more support than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The little bit of downtime between having a close convenient store like right down the street, that little bit of downtime can go a long way in people understanding the impact that, like, maybe the store is a little bit more expensive, like a few cents more expensive for the item than you're going to pay for like at the big box store down the street. But yeah, if you stop shopping there, or if tragedy strikes and that store is no longer an option, think about like the time that it takes to drive and to park and to fight the crowd and to stand in line at the checkout and to spend your gas if it is further away. I mean,
Yeah,
those few pennies per item, I guarantee you're spending more to drive to the big box store than you are to just like use the local convenient option and like
right. I've
them.
done whole Facebook posts about that, that exact thing. And
Yeah.
I mean, you just described the scenario that I talked about exactly.
Yeah.
And people are realizing that. I mentioned all of these different communities. Um, Two of the communities have reached out to me in the past and said, "Would you please put a second grocery store in our town? Would you please come here after we lost ours?" And I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I was working too much already and focusing on one, and there's no sense of diluting my focus and losing both. So I've got to do what I care about, which is taking care of my community.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to add one piece here as far as like anybody who's never seen into the financials of a grocery business model and probably doesn't know. Grocery stores, especially an independent grocery store, from my experience, it takes roughly 95 to 99% of your revenue to run the business. So that's like what it costs to just stay in
Yeah,
business. And then you're thinking like, oh, so that means like the take home is like 1%. Yeah. Like the profit at the top, that like you didn't have to spend that money to keep the lights on or to keep your employees' paychecks cashing at the bank or whatever. Like
yeah,
99% of the money that you take in goes right back out the door.
yeah.
And
I mean,
so,
if people would look at the electrical costs that we've got with all of the compressors, the lights, the equipment, things like that,
what was
it
your
adds up.
electric bill back before, like rough ballpark? Probably fluctuated
Yeah,
with the
we were like $1,800 a month or something like that.
yeah.
As you can see, my building was old. My building was inefficient. The equipment was old. But that's one of the things that I'm talking about in my future that are going to be so much better, and why I do think that I can make this business so much stronger. We fought with the power company. They proposed a rate increase and said it isn't going to bother anybody. I said this is going to be huge for us. We went before the Iowa Utilities Board, and I was one of 10 businesses that they used. I'll call it as a test case. I don't remember exactly what the right words were, but they looked at the possibilities of what this was going to do to us, and they came back and they said that this isn't going to bother anybody by more than 5%, on their monthly bill. My budget billing, my average bill before this increase had been about $1,300, with the highest at about $1,800. Now, all of a sudden, my budget billing, my average bill was over 1,800, and we had a bill that was 24, 2,500 one time. Those air when you've got all of those compressors, they're also putting out heat. So now your air conditioning is working so much harder to keep it cold.
Right. Like
We had
really
to have
goes
two air
down
conditioners.
in the
Yeah,
winter.
5,000 square foot building, so we had to have two air conditioners. One of those broke down the week after I bought the store. The water heater broke down a month after I bought the store. You know, all of the upkeep and stuff that goes into a grocery store are the types of things that people don't think about. As you said, the average profit margin is 1 to 3% in a grocery store, and there are some that don't make that.
I
So,
the first few years, I mean, when you're
yes,
talking about that air conditioner broke down, the hot water heater broke down, that means that you're now in the red. Your one
yeah,
to 3%, that's gone to the air conditioner and then some. So
yeah,
like, the ends aren't meeting anymore as soon as you have like one unexpected expense. So yeah, that razor thin margin. I'm sure people maybe have heard about that in the grocery industry. But that's what that means is that like out of every dollar, there's a penny left. So then when your
yeah.
air conditioner breaks down, you need like a bunch of pennies. And that, like, where are you supposed to get those from? Yeah.
8 months after I bought the store, we replaced all of the lighting in the store, with more efficient lighting. There was a nice rebate on that, uh, but it still would have taken a few years to pay for itself. A year after I bought the store, we replaced most of the freezers and a couple of coolers in the store. Spent over $40,000 on that. So there goes the profit margin for a couple of years at least, that you've just killed off.
Yeah.
But that's what we had to do, was do the things to try to make it more efficient, make it get better equipment, and do whatever I could.
Yeah.
And the people knew that we were here to stay and that we were trying to do everything that we could to provide for the long run. So that helps.
I feel like that's a good point about grocery in general is that you have to be in it for the long run. It's not the kind of business that you would ever open and be like, yeah, 3 to 5 years, I think I'll like be able to sell this or move on or whatever. It's like, no, like it's going to take 5 years just to make it like profitable, just to make it float. And then, then you really get to build it or whatever. So it is such a long run, committed, dedicated position to like be
Yeah,
a local grocer.
I was 48 when I bought the grocery store, and I had been in the business all of my life, but I'm still learning new things at that point
Yeah.
and taking on all of these new jobs and trying to do it efficiently. And, that takes time. I went to the food shows that my warehouse put on. I'm actually going to one next week. And I went to those, and I'm trying to buy for the future for the store for the next 6 months, get the deals where I can. Well, it takes time to learn how to do that and to do it properly, to do it efficiently.
Hmm.
I'm thinking to myself, well, ice cream, you know, I can get deals on that if I buy it here at the food show. I always sell ice cream. Well, it still gets outdated. You can buy too much.
Yeah.
And then other things, it's not worth, when you're talking about a small town store like this, I can save some money if I order a couple of cases of green beans to come in 3 months. Well, am I really going to need those? And is it worth it tying up my money to save a quarter a case? Some of the things have huge savings if you buy them now. You know this.
Yeah.
Other ones are just very, very tiny,
Like, yeah,
little
save a
bits,
penny.
and
Yeah.
it's not worth it.
Sure.
I would get I would get stacks of paperwork that were like this, getting ready for the food shows. I wouldn't. I would put it on the scale to see what it weighed. I had 18 pounds of paperwork at times that were coming in, and I just start going through those books and tearing out the pages that I don't need a pallet of pork rinds. I don't need a pallet of this. My little store, this won't work. Saving the things that are going to work. But one of the other things that I did, and ways that I tried to give back, we've got a food pantry down the block from us, just a block down the street. And because of my industry, I've always done what I could to help them. So I go down and I say, I see this on sale in a couple of months. Is that something you think you might want? Because I'm trying to give them the best deals that I possibly can, and share items with them. I worked with a neighboring grocery store a couple of times. We'd buy a pallet of something together and split that up. They're one of the ones that I'm talking about that closed down and it's no longer there. but you try to work with your neighbors, you try to do the best that you can to make things more efficient and give you the best opportunities. And
Yeah.
that's one of the ways that I did that. Like I said, I believe in my community and I want to do what I can. So that's why I was working with the food pantry. It's necessary, and I've got the best option of helping them. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like from the first episode, he who can must. You have access to this, and that's what they
exactly.
do, and like just put it together.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, okay, so it sounds like on the architect front, you're have gone as far as you can, as far as designing the building, picking out the equipment, and now working to get the right contractor so we can actually
Yeah.
do construction. Um,
Yeah.
what have you been doing to occupy yourself and to, do what you can do kind of in the last year while it's been kind of a big hurry up and wait type situation? What else has come up and what else have you been doing?
I tell my story very well. I've had the opportunities. Yeah, I won that statewide business pitch contest years ago, and that introduced me to a lot of people around the state. Our governor, people at the Iowa Economic Development Authority, the small business development centers, things like that. A couple of years ago, I was invited into a program called Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. I looked at that. They said that you need to probably dedicate 25 or 30 hours a week to that, but it's tremendously helpful for your business. Well, at that time, I'm running the store, I'm working 80 hours a week or something, and I just didn't see how I could do that. So I had to back out of that. Well, I got a second invitation to that. I'm out of business at the moment. I had the time. So, I dedicated myself to that. And it is something that is going to make my business more profitable, more efficient, and more valuable for the future. So I did that.
What would you
Um,
say were some of the best takeaways you got out of that program?
well, as I said, I work 80, 85 hours a week. I tried to do most of the things on my own. I knew that I was very poor at delegating jobs and things like that. And this teaches you how to do that better. This teaches you how to look at your financial reports better, but also how they tie together. How, if you can change a little bit here by being a little bit more efficient here, it makes this one so much better. And those are things that the people are looking for when they're talking about possibly buying your business. So
Right.
little changes here can make a big impact, down the road in some ways. Um, I've been limping for over 10 years because of I had a bad foot. I had some problems with that. My podiatrist kept saying, you need to get this taken care of, but you're going to have to be off of your feet for weeks. And I mean, with your foot propped up, not sitting at your desk or something like that. I had the time to do that. I was on a scooter or on crutches for 6, 8 weeks. I've got 21 pieces of titanium in my foot now, but it's a lot better than what it was, and it's going to allow me to work better in the future when I get back there.
Would
As I
you
said, I
would you have done that ever
no, I'd have continued
before?
limping along until after I retired, probably.
Oh, which is just like you were
Yes,
in
some
pain.
days it didn't bother me, but there were other days where it hurt bad enough I could barely walk. But that's much better now. It's been about 8, 9 months. It's still recovering slightly, but I'm getting there. I talked about telling my story. We had the documentary that was done about me, which has brought me different opportunities. I spoke before I went to Ames, Iowa, which is about 3 hours away. In I think it was May or June, early June. But I spoke to the directors of all of the small business development centers here in the state and their advisory board also. I went to a festival called Entree Fest in Iowa City last month and was on a panel discussion there, talking to small business owners. I've had the opportunity to do different events and speak at different areas. Over the time that my store has been closed, I've been to Washington, D.C. twice and spoken to my senators, people in Congress, people on the small business and entrepreneurship committee for the Senate.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to do what I can to help my whole industry, help my community, help myself, get my story out there. Just this past weekend, we've talked about the documentary that was done about my store. They came from all over is the title of that. It has been accepted into a film festival on the other side of Iowa, the premier film festival for Iowa called the Snake Alley Festival of Films in Burlington, Iowa. Snake Alley is the most crooked street in the world, and that's what the film festival was named for. But I went there on Sunday. The film was shown, the awards ceremony. This is the T-shirt I got from that. The award ceremony was shortly after our film was shown. It was a 4-day event. I went for the final day in the award ceremony. The documentary that was done about me. I didn't do the work. The documentary that was done about me won the award for the best Iowa-made film. But I'm there getting my story out. I talked to someone for 45 minutes or an hour almost during a break that we had, and got a number of connections that could very possibly help me in the future. I'm trying to do what I can, as I said, to share my story, to get that story out there, to find people that can help me. And 95 to 99% of these connections are not going to pan out. But that 1%, that 5%, that just those very few are what I need and what's going to do it. And just like the old fable, you've got to kiss a lot of toads or frogs, to get your prince. Well, I'm doing a lot of things along that line also, and hoping to find that one or those few that are going to make the difference for my store in the future.
Yeah. Would you say that's why you're like so focused on telling your story at this point, is trying to find the team who's gonna like actually
Yeah,
help you rebuild?
that's a lot of it. The film, I was blessed that Meta, that Facebook wanted to do this project and to put all of the money into it that they did. The basis of the story is about how important small businesses are to the community.
Can we
But they
can
used
we
my
start at the
story to tell them.
beginning of the can we start at the beginning of the
Yeah.
documentary story? Like, because I think you've told me a little bit, but I don't think we've talked about it like on the episode. So
Okay.
how did you first get approached, or whose idea was it? Like, how did the origin of the documentary come about?
Kira McCoy is a Meta Facebook employee. She is the one that started this Facebook group I've talked about in previous episodes. It's called the Leaders Network. It is a small business group of business owners and managers, but Facebook runs it. Facebook put it together. You have to be invited or vetted to be into the group. And it's amazing people from all over the country, people that are shipping products worldwide, people that are, doing national commercials, uh, people that have small town grocery stores. I'm the only grocery store owner in the group, but the people that I've met there have been amazing. Um, a year ago in May, Facebook invited 500 of us to Washington, D.C. to speak to our legislators, but they paid for the airfare, the hotels. They put together events for us and did that. And, they, us talking to the legislators about the things that are important for small businesses or why they do that. But we are the voices of small business, and, had an amazing opportunity. Did that again this May, and there were fewer people this time. And excuse me, it was April, but it was actually the day after the film premiered in Des Moines. But Kira had approached me last September or October as I'm recovering from my foot surgery, and said, "We'd like to talk to you. Do you have time for a Zoom meeting?" And did. And Susie Nelson was on the Zoom meeting also. She was one of the administrators of the group. But they said, we have presented an idea to our bosses. We'd like to do a documentary about your story, about your attempt to rebuild and what you're doing in your community. And we can't go any further without talking to you and making sure you're on board with this.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Sounds fantastic. And they had to keep pushing it further up the ladder. Uh, and it was probably 6, 8 weeks later, they came back and said, it's going to happen. Early December, we're going to come back and do this. Years ago, when I won that business pitch contest, a small documentary was done about me. And two guys came with a video camera, some recording equipment, and came to the store and were there for the afternoon. That was my experience with this type of thing. That was what I was kind of expecting, was something like that. The day that I graduated from that Goldman Sachs business program, I drove home from Des Moines. I got home after 5 o'clock that evening. And 20 minutes later, three people from the documentary are at my house. We'd been making arrangements, but they wanted to come and meet me. And it was the cameraman, the producer, and the director for the documentary. And this is Friday evening. And we talked for 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. And filming is going to start next Tuesday. They were around town. They were staying in Omaha, which is about 35 minutes away. But they were around town all weekend and looking at areas where they wanted to film, talking to people, things like that. I expected three people. Tuesday morning, there was a 27-person film crew at my house. The street in front of my house was the whole block. Both sides of the street had cars and trucks. There were, there was at least 3 or 4 generators in my front yard to power up all of the equipment they had. It's early December. They said, can we take your pickup out of the garage? And I didn't know what they wanted, but sure, I'm trying to do anything that they want. And they set up tables so that they could feed the crew in there and get them out of the cold a little bit, because half of these people were stuck outside. There was room in the house for everyone, or their jobs didn't require them. But that's when it started. And Tuesday, we filmed all day, different shots in my house. Then we went out to the cemetery and we're out there for an hour and a half or so. And, again, I'm trying to do anything that they want. I hadn't been walking very long after that surgery, and walking across the uneven ground out in the cemetery was very painful. They said, do you need to break? Do we need to come back and do this later? I said, no, whatever you need, we're going to get it done. I was hurting that night, spent a long time warming up and relaxing in the bathtub. But, they were here, finished filming on Saturday evening, and shots all around the town, talking to all sorts of people, and then took it back to California, and many people working on the editing. They sent a microphone to me that was almost 3 foot tall, because they needed to re-record a little bit of audio, somebody coughing in the background or something, covering up some of the stuff they wanted. So I had a couple people come to my house while we did that. It was an amazing experience. They came to my house on Tuesday, was the first day of the filming. Wednesday, they were doing a lot of shots in a restaurant downtown that morning anyway, and I stayed away from that. I didn't need to get in the middle of it. Kira came to my house. She called me and said, can I come up and talk to you? She was going back. She lives in San Francisco. She was going back that day, even though the project was continuing. But she wanted to talk to me and say goodbye and stuff. And at one point she said, did you check out anything about the director? Have you heard anything about her? I said, well, she's very young, but seems to know what she's doing. She said, did you know that she won an Oscar for her first documentary? No.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. The people that they brought in were first class.
Yeah.
As I said, I expected three people and a camera, and it was 1,000 times more than that. It's already won awards in film festivals. As I said, there was an earlier one before that. It is one of three finalists for an international award in September in Los Angeles for Best Short Documentary. And just for the month of May, there were dozens that came in for that festival from around the world. And it won the best for May. And like I said, is now one of three finalists. Uh, I'd love to see this make it to the Oscars.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, but again, the whole thing is about getting that story out there. There's a website set up for it. They came from all over.com. You can find it on Facebook. You can find the videos on YouTube.
Mhm.
So again, I'm just trying to share the word about that and make the connections. Um, Kira has helped in any way that she can. We're working on a GoFundMe page, and we aren't going to release that until we've got some better news about when things are actually starting on the rebuild. You can go, the t-shirt that I wore in the last episode or two
Mhm.
is part of a fundraiser through Bonfire. It's bonfire.com/Mulholland. And, I wore the t-shirt to the film festival on Sunday. I was up on stage twice and talking about the film, talking about what we're doing, and had the opportunity to share my story with these people. It was after the first time, and then there was a break. That's why this woman sat down with me and shared all of these contacts, because people believe in what I'm doing and know that I'm trying to do it to help my community and want to do whatever they can to help me. And I appreciate that. And that's why I'm out there talking to people. That's why I'm going to these different events around the state, around the Midwest, and trying to get the short story shared and asking other people to do that for me also. Tell your friends, show them this. Once you watch that film, you can't help but be moved by the story. And that's what's going to help us in the long run.
Yes.
And I'd love to find some ways to get my story shared in even bigger ways. I think one of the best opportunities might be to get on a talk show or something, and trying to find that opportunity. I
Amazing.
need to find that assistant to the director or producer or whatever. Somebody's cousin does this, and you know it'll happen.
It will happen.
That's exactly why I'm going full speed ahead, even though I don't have the money yet. I believe in it, and I'm going to do whatever I can for my community, and getting that story out there and getting that money to come in is how I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm all in.
I mean, it's several million dollars, most likely, to build the building and all the equipment and I
Yeah,
mean, total that it would
right.
cost to put it
Yeah,
up.
yeah. In insurance, as I said, I had replacement cost coverage. I thought I was fine. That doesn't mean anything. They put a cap on that. Insurance is going to pay not quite 1.2 million. There was some other money that came in for the contents of the building, but again, not enough. Think about what the shelving cost for the entire store.
Yeah.
Think about what a big electrical meat saw or grinder cost.
Yeah.
The replacement on all of the freezers and refrigeration needs came up to about $400,000. Insurance paid me $200,000 for the contents of the building. So again, I'm behind the eight ball there and trying to do what I can. We've gotten a grant here from the state. We've gotten promises of a little more money here and there. But part of this stuff, they can't tell us what they're going to be able to do until we can give them our final numbers. And so we've got to, continue forward and hope for the best. And I'm doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such a testament to what resilience really looks like, where and like what persistence, perseverance, like what it really looks like. It looks like there's no green lights going on like on your road and you're zooming ahead anyway because
Yeah,
the world isn't necessarily going to just like drop it in our lap usually. Like
yeah,
faith, that belief in yourself, that drive to like keep pushing because it matters.
yeah.
That's the part that like magnetizes, in my opinion, magnetizes all of these opportunities to you.
Right. You know, when we had the premiere for the film, it premiered in Des Moines, and the Iowa Arts Council was extremely helpful in getting this out there and choosing where to have that. They were talking at one point that the premiere may be in New York City, someplace on the East Coast. So, that's what I was thinking. But you never know when people that you've met in the past are going to pop up and be extremely impactful. I'd forgotten about it. I had seen something years ago about the director of the Iowa Arts Council. She was one of my customers when I worked that 20 years in Omaha. But I never expected, I'm a small town grocer. Why would I ever be working with the Iowa Arts Council? So I'd forgotten about that. She had seen pictures, of the previews for the film and stuff, but it had been enough years she didn't recognize me. But her mother-in-law was one of my favorite customers, was a caterer that I did a lot of extra work for in all of those years that I worked up there. She didn't come to me because of that former connection, but she felt a lot better about it once she realized and once I told her who I was and reminded her of that. It's who you are and how people connect to you are some of the ways that are going to help you in the long run. I've talked about the things that I did with COVID, with the severe flooding that we had in our area, and it was part of it was the reputation that I built for helping the people in my area at that time that came back to me when I needed help now, after my store burned. I commented that people had come to me with donations to help the flood victims, to help people that were suffering because of COVID, lost their jobs or whatever. And now they were coming to hand me donations to help me.
Yeah. Like tragedy obviously is heartbreaking and nobody would ever willingly walk right into the middle of it. But I do think that those kinds of moments show us the true nature of humanity. I think at our core, humans are very generous and very loving and know a good heart when we see it. So, like the fact that they would trust you, the first couple of times to like take those resources and deploy them to other people. I mean, they clearly understood your track record to like come and chip in on you yourself getting back on your feet. So,
People, I keep saying that I'm nothing special. I'm just trying to do my job. I'm trying to do what's right. But the humility, the humbleness are what people comment about and say that's the reason that we want to help you. I had immediately after the fire and people are sending me donations, handing me money or whatever. I had an extremely hard time accepting that. You know, I don't want money for myself. I want money so I can help other people. And I had a very good friend that talked to me at one point and she said, you need to stop thinking like this. You need to think of it as um, a down payment, as a payment, a donation to helping the community's future. You know, because bringing that store back is so extremely important. That's what the money is for. It's to help the community.
yeah,
Through you.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it made it a lot easier to accept and to understand that. But it was very hard. And you know, it really bothered me that people were sending money at first. And now I'm out asking for it
Yeah.
and, trying, my community has given so much already. It's a very small community and they have donated in so many ways, whether it's money, whether it's time, whatever. There's been people that have helped me all along, but it's more than they can do. And that's why that's why this documentary is so important. That's why I'm trying to get the story out there and get it shared, uh, because the people here have done what they can, but it's beyond that now, and I'm hoping that others would hopefully help an entire community. There's over 1,000 people here that now no longer have the access to fresh foods. So that's why we're doing this and why I'm trying so hard.
Well, and I think too, like, you are charging full steam ahead and you are doing everything that you can. And that also, as far as making an impact, I feel like that's a critical ingredient where a lot of people want to like get their ducks in a row kind of thing, and then I'll move forward. And it's like, you'll be sitting there waiting to gather ducks for the rest of time. Whereas,
Yeah,
like, if you truly want it to happen, if it's lighting a fire under you such that you have to run forward, that's where I think the world just kind of starts falling into step with what you're doing. Like people show up wanting to make a documentary about your story and like all of the
yeah.
things that you truly need to make it happen.
Just like anything else, you can't please everybody. It has been extremely frustrating for myself with the amount of time that it's taken, but it's been extremely frustrating for the community also. And there have been a few people that have been very vocal. Why hasn't anything happened? Why are we not seeing anything? I'm trying. Those comments hurt. Um, I was getting extremely depressed. I was not being out in public in my community for a while because it bothered me. Everybody asking, and I don't have any good answers. I'm
Yeah.
trying, I'm trying to do what I can. There were people that said that too he's out begging for money, trying to, have people line his pockets. And that's not what this is about. And I'm not waiting while we're looking for the money. They said he's not going to do this until he has enough donations. That's not true. I am doing everything that I can, even knowing I don't have enough money yet. Um, my banker is talking to me about possibly going slightly smaller on the building, uh, because we don't have the funds for what I'm looking at yet. I don't think that that's going to be enough for what the community needs, how to build the store, uh, actually. And, I'm fighting against that because, again, it needs to be there for the future, and having that smaller footprint, that is just a convenience store. We've got that at this point, and we need a grocery store with the fresh foods, with the fresh meat, the fresh produce and vegetables. So it needs to be a little bit bigger. It needs to be, the same size as what I had before or bigger. There were two empty lots next door to me that I purchased so that we could expand a little bit. That's how we're able to put the drive up window in that we've got planned, the coffee shop that we've got planned. These are things that, my community needs. We don't have a coffee shop like that, at this point. And it's something that could bring more, my customers that come for the groceries are going to help out the coffee shop. People that come for the coffee shop are going to be picking up groceries also. So it's a win-win and going to help each other. But as I've said before, my business also helps those other businesses on Main Street. People that come here now, they're going to go to the drugstore as long as I'm in town. Different things like that.
Yeah.
And so, it's just building blocks and dominoes that are all connected and that help each other, and
It
got to
takes
make it work.
it takes a lot to build a grocery store, even if you already have the building, let alone if you're starting literally from the ground up. And
Yeah,
I totally hear you on kind of those accusatory is probably like too strong of a word, but like those comments that are like, why haven't we seen anything? What's happening? Like, why isn't he doing anything? That is like my main goal with this podcast, is to kind of put everybody's power back in their own hands. And instead of saying like, why hasn't he done anything yet? Ask a question, how could I help? What could I do to help this move along faster? I want it faster than this. So how do I get involved to like make it happen on a faster timeline? I'm not going to just sit in the cheap seats and be like, this guy down here needs to hurry up and get to work and do better and all of that. It's like we all have something to add, and we all have the capacity to make it happen faster. So, there's something that we could do potentially, even if that's just okay, then help us spread the word even faster so that we can raise the
yeah,
funds faster, so that we can move ahead more quickly. I mean, it doesn't sound like what you're waiting on is necessarily much in the way of like the technical process, so much as it does take a bunch of money to make it happen. And I understand not wanting to wait until you have all the money raised. Like, you could definitely start construction without the
yeah,
full funds, but at the same time, like, you better have some good momentum, otherwise you're going to stop construction right in the middle when the funds do run out, and
yeah.
then there's a big pause where your building's half built, and that's not what anybody wants. So
No,
yeah, we have to
no,
at least see the finish line of the fundraising, to be able
yeah,
to kind of like move with a good conscience into that construction phase. So, yeah,
yeah,
like, instead of why aren't you doing better, what could I be doing? How could I help? What could I contribute? Who could I call? What resources are hanging you up right now?
yeah.
What?
I mean, not, again, people are coming to me with ideas and with offers of help in
Mhm.
different ways. I had a friend that offered me he had bought a house that had a barn behind. He said you could use that barn to put your smoker in or to make your sausages and still be, making some money. I said, I appreciate that, but that won't work. I said, besides having the smoker, I need refrigeration and freezers. And it needs to be, someplace that's clean enough that could be inspected and pass inspection.
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. But again,
Good luck.
people are wanting to throw ideas out and
Mhm.
just like the
Most
other stuff,
people.
95, 99% of them may not work, but you know, throw them out here. It's that 5%, that 1%, whatever it is, that is going to make a difference and that is going to help. Right now, the main thing that I can think of is spreading the story. That's the thing that can help me the most.
Yeah,
Finding a way to share that story even bigger. So,
absolutely.
that's what I'm focusing on at this point. When we're not meeting and working on the next phase of the build. Um, COVID and the construction industry right now has caused problems. Part of it's people wanting to work or not having enough people to do the work. We When we were looking, we needed to do masonry work on the wall next door still, and my construction company sent out a request for bids to 14 or 15 different masonry companies last year. One responded, and my architect thought that they were possibly bidding a much higher than what it should be, just because they did have it locked up very possibly. I was talking to somebody just last week that I think could do the job and do it much cheaper. So we're going to look forward on that. But again, it's just finding ways to save the money where we can, make the most of it, and get more in by spreading the story.
Yeah. That's really all you can do at this point. And that is why down in the description, we have all the links that you need to personally help share the story. So I expect that there's going to be at least a few people who feel called to help get the word out there. Either they have a personal connection to rural grocery or a personal connection to wanting to use whatever voice you have, whatever platform you have, to wanting to help this community, these 1,000 people who don't currently have access. They have a person, a champion, who's trying to bring back access, but there's only so much one person can do without the support of the funding and the connections and all of that. So any amount of helping to raise visibility of this story that you can personally do, we greatly appreciate it. Your impact helping someone else to make an impact that genuinely improves the quality of life of many, many people in the process. So any amount that you're able to share, we do greatly appreciate that. We'll call that a wrap here on the third episode of My Grocery Adventure. Tom, thank you so much for joining us
You,
again and sharing your story. I hope it's a win-win. I know I certainly have had a lot to think about from what you've shared, and I'm sure others will too. And if we can pay you back by helping to raise visibility on your story, then I feel like that's a pretty fair trade. So thank you
thank you.
so much. And we will see you guys next time on the next installment of My Grocery Adventure. Until then, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.